Right. Hi, folks. Hopefully you're hearing me loud and clear. Thank you for your patience as we got started. My name's Mung. I'm the Academic Registrar and Student Services Manager here at the Cairn Miller Institute. And I'm very proud and glad to be able to welcome today's panel to provide you all with an overview and insight into the Master of Professional Psychology program here at Cairn Miller. Pleased to welcome Associate Professor Terence Bartholomew, the course coordinator, Courtney Worth, our placement coordinator, as well as Isabel, who I think will be joining us in a few moments, and Lincoln, who are current student representatives in the course. Today, we'll be giving you all an overview into the program, and it'll be a really valuable opportunity for you to ask questions direct to the panel, to hear from current faculty and student experience, to get a better sense of whether or not this is the right course for you and how you might go about applying. So with that, I'll pass over to Terry.
Thanks, Mark. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to open up the meeting, of course, with an acknowledgement of country, to acknowledge the peoples on the land that we're sitting on at present, and you might give some thought to the founders and rightful owners of the land that you're on, wherever you are in Australia. Our work is about helping people, and our work is hopefully about righting wrongs and kind of social justice on some level. So every small thing that we can do in those parameters, I think, really matters. And we want these kinds of acknowledgements to be something beyond just text, don't we? Because this is the work that we can do on a very micro ideographic level with clients. Thanks, Mark. Am I in control of the slides, am I? No. You're going to control them, or you want me to?
I'm happy to moderate the slides for you, Terry.
Me too. Thank you. Today, our humble plan is to talk a little bit about what is an NPP. You're here, so I don't think you need to spend too much time on that. Why do one? In many ways, that's a personal decision, but we'll tell you a little bit about how it falls into the scheme of things in terms of the structure, but that's a slide I'm sure you've seen many times. Why might you want to come here? Talk to you a little bit about that. And something I want to spend a little time on is a little bit of information about our course, our aims, our details, our ethos, our approach, and also our approach to practicum. Some students are interested in the idea of what the process of selection looks like for us. I'll provide you with a little bit of information about that without showing you the answers, of course. And then we'll talk a little bit about fees and funding, and want to hear from our student reps as well. So as we dive through those various topics, we'll be consulting them. They're the experts in what it feels like to do this course, and we'll be seeking that counsel. Thanks, Mark. Hit us with all of those. We're ready for them. So there's the traumatic events that you've been through so far in life. Off to the left there, the undergraduate years and the fourth year. Most of you are well and truly on the way to finishing that fourth year. You're now considering the idea of where to go next. And of course, one of those is what we would call a level 3 program, which is a 5th year program. You can see the levels there if you go from left to right. Undergraduate's regarded as a level 1 by APAC, 4th year is regarded as a level 2, and 5th year is regarded as a level 3 program. So you hear me use that term, that's all it means. And so a 5th year is common, isn't it? You do it if you do an NPP, but you also do it if you do a specialised program like an MCLIN. You do a 5th year somewhere along the lines. You're still in a course if you do a 6th year in the MCLIN, but you're off doing an internship if you do an NPP. You really only have 1 year of formal study. For that reason, it feels incredibly compressed. It feels as compressed, I would say, as your 4th year, but on many different levels. And again, we'll seek some counsel from our student reps about what those differences might be. And what else have you got on that slide, Mark? Bit of clinical psych action there. You can see that as the alternative. the 2-year pathway. Some of you are dead keen to do that. Remember, many people these days do the 5th year, do the internship. Ideally, they work in the field for a little while, and then they go back and do what we call a post-registration program if they want to indeed get a clinical speciality. That's a really viable option, and I teach in that program, and it's a very interesting one to be in because you've got practitioners who've with so many varied levels of experience in it, and I think in many ways it's a better way to go about it. You're more ready for the content after having worked in the field for a while. I'm only getting more solid in that view as I go on, to tell you the truth. Why Ken Miller, or what we call CMI? You can read some of that stuff. We've been around since 1961, and we have a history in the psychodynamic and also in the not-for-profit spheres, 2 areas that are really important to me personally and to many members of the team. In our MPP, we offer this idea of you being here face-to-face 100% of the time, or you being not here face-to-face 100% of the time. Now, we also have the facility for you to be in one unit face-to-face and to be in another one online if you want to, but that's usually individually negotiated. And to be honest with you, we don't have too many students who go down that road, but you're allowed to. I can think of one, for example, doing the testing unit, and they were like, look, I could probably drive in an hour and be in that. I'd rather be in the room while I was learning about the whisk and the waste, etc. And I thought, that kind of makes a bit of sense. If you don't have the tyranny of distance, it would be what I would do with that kind of unit. I want the blocks in my hand. I want to feel this stuff, if possible. We're an organisation that only offers training in psychology and in counselling, and that's it. We don't have an architecture faculty. We don't have a geography department. We don't have any of that stuff. For people like me who have worked in big unis, and most of us in the teaching team, that's a giant relief. We get to decide how we want to do things with very much a focus on these 2 subcategories. It makes a big difference, I think, to have all the staff walking up and down the corridors all aligned in a very client-centered, helping profession kind of way. You could speak the same language in a meeting. I've sat in many meetings with the head of architecture or whatever, and you just think, what are they talking about? Or what is this important to them? And they're probably wondering the same thing about me. Our facilities are, good in terms of, given the numbers that we have people walking around, we've got plenty of options for a range of things that we'll go into more detail shortly. There's possibility for courses at a range of widths. There's a range of professional programs going on all the time. We have Trauma Connect. We have all kinds of other things that are PD, professional development for professionals. And as a result, there's just a width and a scope around the whole place that feels really different in this space. In terms of that social justice stuff, we are not for profit. Much of our benefits to the community in terms of delivering services and fees, you go back to the community. That's important to us. We talk a lot about the triple helix at CMI, and that is the idea that we're heavily involved in training professionals. We do a lot of research, and we also run 1, 2, 3, 4 clinics. Is that right, Court? 4? Yeah, thank you. Across various places in Melbourne, the city, Hawthorn, Dandenong, and
North Melbourne,
North Melbourne,
Dandenong. Yep.
Yeah, you've got it. Thank you. And that's where some students do their placements, but it's also where people like me work today. I'm based in Hawthorn. That's where I'm talking to you from, where I have done a client day. On a Thursday, I see clients in the Hawthorn Clinic, as many of our teaching staff do. Or they work in private practice. So there's a point of difference already. Thanks, Mum. Course aims. Again, this stuff, the core competencies, I've written in brackets there, current, because as you are familiar from your 4th year study, core competencies and codes of conduct are all changing in December. And the 8 there are being supplemented and altered slightly, and so you will be being taught the new ones, of course, by the time you're studying. It's a good time to be doing it. Lincoln and Isabel and all of their colleagues, of course, have had to learn the old one, and then we're learning the new one. So we're always going, of course, in the old one, and then there's the new one, and then there's this. We're learning 2 languages at once. It's a difficult process because they're in placements. They've got to adhere to the current authority, but next year it's a different scenario, a different story. There's no surprises there, I don't think, for too many of you in terms of what the kinds of things you're talking about and that we'll be focusing on. Thanks, Mark. So what do we do here in our program? Well, I will tell you unequivocally that we are unapologetic in the idea that we have a client-centered focus in the teaching that we do, in the supervision that we do, and in the idea of you being in placement work. In honours, the focus is very much on you, and I know that feels hectic and difficult. It's not fun a lot of the time, but here we have a third party in the room. You've got yourself, you've got your instructor, and now we have a supervisor, and now we have a client. And you're doing placements in an MPP at a 5th year level, and we have to be able to have the energy, the focus, the skill set, the ability, the tolerance, and all of the above to do some good for them. And so we've always got eyes on that. For that reason, we unapologetically in our program focus on the idea that you must take responsibility for more than you did in 4th year. You must be more flexible than you had to be in 4th year. If there's a feature of a 4th year program, in many ways, it should feel like a set of railway tracks, shouldn't it? It's got a set of stations that you go to, that you stop at. Sometimes it moves too quickly, sometimes there's too much baggage, whatever the analogy could be. But many would say 5th year feels really different to that. I don't think it's any more academically difficult, but I'll ask Iz and Lincoln about that in a second. I think it feels different in a really in a width kind of way, but I'll seek their opinions on that shortly. Well, let's do it now. Lincoln, is what would you say? How different is it from 4th year? What are the big differences?
You want to go, Isabel, or?
Yeah, I'm happy to go. I would say it's different in most ways. It's a lot less emphasis on rote learning and technical things. There's a lot more integrated into real life practice, as we've been saying, and everything relates back to how can you use all of these elements together to combine to this individual, to this case, to this situation. And I think in that way, it's quite different to the more research heavy side that 4th year tends to be.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's what I found is that where I'm so used to hitting those rubrics and just addressing what that's calling for, now you got to look at it holistically and have that, they're sort of training you for that clinical judgment that you're going to need when you are in practice. So, you know, you might have all the information there, but how does this inform your practice, and how are you going to piece this all together to make those moves? So it feels sometimes more subjective than before in opinion based, which is different because before, if your name was anywhere like any first person perspective, that was not correct, not the right thing to do. So it is different in that way.
Yeah, interesting. A great points, this idea of the rubric, this idea of the focus, as you said, this idea of it being less about rules and less about, of course, we're empirically informed, but now it's like we have a voice. What are we doing with the client? What might we do? One of our goals is always about working out what kind of clinician you might want to be. One of our goals, and of course, like this, is to give you a feel for a range of modalities and a range of approaches, and to go, I love that. That doesn't feel like me. That doesn't feel natural. You follow your natural game. You're a more congruent therapist, and if you're a more congruent therapist, you're more consistent, and that means you have a greater reliance, and therefore you're more effective. The data are clear about that stuff. So yes, helping you work out what you're good at, what you may need to work on, being open to the idea that you're always developing, because all of us are doing that. So yes, our focus on your responsibility, the idea of what you can hold, what you can carry, is huge. It's one of the biggest adjustments, I think. This cognitive flexibility that Lincoln talked about, the idea that the rubric may not tell you exactly what to do at every moment, because one of our slogans in the course is, and I don't want to make Lincoln and Isabel roll their eyes, but you know, clients don't come with rubrics written on their foreheads. They just don't. We have to be able to trust instincts. We have to be able to make judgment calls. As was said, this stuff feels really important. We're keen to train you in the idea of professionalism, communication. How do we hold ourselves? When do we know I need a break? How do we know what I'm up for? For that reason, you know, next year we're reintroducing an attendance requirement with tutorials and a participation component as well, i.e. you get marked on those things because it feels hard to maintain the idea of students finishing or trainees finishing with threshold competencies if we can't see them. And for us, we take that responsibility seriously. We're always working out ways to try to ensure that and to increase our visibility of things. Our class sizes are capped at about 28. Many of them are smaller. That includes our face-to-face and online classes. Now that feels reasonably big, but we have a reasonably big cohort. Our goal is to make it feel like it's not that. Our goal is to make it feel like you're in a smaller group when you do a workshop, when you do a tutorial, you get to know those people and you work with it. You know, the only time you'll be aware of the fact that there's many more is, you know, probably at the orientation session. The rest of the time, all of our lectures in our course are recorded. You get to listen to those and watch those at your own speed, at your own time. You know, as one of my tutors says to me, she listens to me in double speed because I'm always repeating myself. I get that. Lincoln's laughing as well. He's probably got me at 3 times already. I get that as well. We've got ample placement opportunities. I'll get caught to talk about that shortly. And if there's one big contrast for our program for many of the others is the connection between our placement team and our academic team. It's something that people have heard me say before, but in working in other unis in applied programs, there's 2 in particular that I used to work at where I had never met the placement team. They were names and I never met them. They worked in another building. And I'm not exaggerating. We were like, yeah, where's Barbara today? And it was like, who is Barbara anyway? Does anyone know what she looks like? It was like, what's going on here? For us, we meet every week, the entire team, and talk about what we're noticing about the course, what we're noticing about gaps, what we're noticing about student progress, what we're noticing about things we could do better. I think it makes our program a lot better, and it means we're very aware of what's going on. We're always focused on integrating the messaging and trying to make it as linear as possible. Don't always get it right. We're trying to improve it, but it's a real focus for us. As I said, we've got these flexible attendance modes. We don't do any what they call hybrid teaching, for those of you who have been subject to it, where you could be in a room face-to-face and then there's a few people who are on screens. I hate that stuff. It's so disruptive. They can't hear you. You can't hear them. What was that? Who's going to see the slides? Yuck. So we don't do that. You're either in the room in a tutorial or you're online in another tutorial. It feels really important to us around that. One of the big differences you'll notice as you move into an NPP is the idea of the width of experience in the room from your colleagues. People with 10 years experience in family violence, people with 5 years experience as a disability support worker, people with 20 years working as such and such, a counsellor, a social worker. Don't be intimidated by that. It's empowering, and a tutorial hearing those perspectives is super beneficial. It creates the kind of thing that you don't often see in an MClin, because it's so much more grade focused, that those people are usually people who've gone 4th year, 5th year, 6th year, etc. I'm not judging them, but those rooms feel really different. I teach the same unit in both those courses, and the rooms feel really different, let me tell you. They both bring strengths and challenges, but they feel different. All of our staff are academics who work as clinicians as well, or who have worked as clinicians as well. We have client loads. We can speak to that kind of thing. Anybody, student or yourself, caught anything to add there before we flick over?
I'll talk placements in a bit.
I was just going to say the one thing I would add to that is that you can tell that all of your teachers have active client loads. It changes the way you're taught.
Is that because we look so frazzled and kind of...
I feel like, well, you could tell practically because also pretty much every point one of you makes is related back to a client you've had recently, but
Right.
it means everything is grounded in reality, in examples, in feeling, rather than just abstract facts. It feels more
Absolutely.
collaborative as well, I'd say, because it's got that realism element to it.
Yeah. Thank you. Luca, any thoughts there you want us to?
Yeah, no, I think absolutely. I find it very beneficial when there's real world examples. So yeah, I'm not going to elaborate further, I guess.
Yep. And I dare say you notice you start to do placement, you're like, oh, this is what they're on about. Okay, that's just happened. This occurs to me. That stuff happens. You know, when the people are first talking about, what are they talking about? Is this really going to happen? And then you think, okay, every client does that. It's important. There's the course structure. To me, that feels very, very abstract at the moment. It's something you're thinking about doing. You're used to seeing all that stuff. You do your ethics unit. That's my unit. Like to think it's more interesting than a stock ethics unit, but we all think our kids are cute and our dogs are smart, so who knows? Then we do a combined psych assessment and psychopathology unit that's being revised next year. And we're also, then you do what's called a double loaded placement unit, because you're getting a mountain of compulsory workshops to do, and you're to prepare for placement work. And some of you are starting placement according to how ready you are, and whether we've got something lined up for you. In second semester, you do those units as listed, and then you also continue your placements there, but with a normally loaded placement unit. I won't go into any more detail than that at this stage, other than to say that there is no thesis in the NPP, as there is in almost every NPP in Australia, no thesis. You do write an applied research project, because applied research is what informs the work that we do. It wants to keep in mind. Think of, I read one last year from someone that was like, you know, how could the place I did my placement improve their waiting list system? Can I go to the literature and find out what's the best way to triage clients, to work out how do we keep less of them in the waiting room for longer, 6 months, 3 months, 1 month? How do we make sure the ones with the greatest need are getting to see the right therapist at the right time? There's literature on that stuff. Let's not make the decision in isolation. This person did a little essay piece, an informed applied research piece about that kind of thing. There's scope to move around and to choose what you want to do within that space, as well as learning about the application of research. Good practitioners understand research and know how to find stuff that's relevant. It's important. YouTubers shouldn't be our only source. What do you got for us, Mark? Can I hand over to you, Court?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, there's always a lot of questions about the placement program and how we do things. And we're pretty lucky at CMI because we've got a lot of opportunities and a lot of diversity within our program. So you will complete one placement across semester 1 and 2. So you're not needing to find multiple placements, which is more common in a clinical program. You can complete 3, sometimes even 4 placements in those programs. So we only have the one, and it is a minimum of 300 hours. Now we break that down into your on placement 2 days per week for about 20 weeks. That can range anywhere from commencing in April or May, and might even sometimes run through until December. It depends on when you start. That will determine when you finish. Now, the placements can be organised by CMI. We do have some ongoing partners, and as our interstate partners grow, our partners in all of the various states and territories increase as well. This is, however, only our 2nd year as a national course, so I am honest that our interstate partners are growing. They are not as established as what we have in Victoria, but they are growing and they are coming back each year, so that's a really good sign, I hope. But what that does mean is that we've got opportunity to match your interests and to also onboard new partnerships. If you have organisations that you know that you would like to complete a placement with. So placements can come through you. We do need to audit them. We do need to approve them to make sure that they are meeting the needs of the program, but also so that we can meet their needs as from what they might need of students. We have had instances in the past where the needs of a placement were beyond an MPP student's capacity, and that's not fair for you or for the client. So we try to make sure that that doesn't happen by auditing the organisations, learning about their client base, learning about what they do and how they do it, so that we can make sure we can match that. We have a very large placement team. There's currently 5 of us and we're still growing. So there's a lot of monitoring that does occur. We check in, we've got good oversight over the placement space, and also supervision can be offered by CMI as well. We probably cover about 70% of the supervision of our current students, with some supervision being offered directly through the placements. As Terry mentioned, we are very integrated with the rest of the program. We try to ensure that the learnings are happening at appropriate times. So for example, semester 2, the workshops, we're offering a lot of different introductions to different treatment modalities, because you're doing a lot of treatment modality work in your academic units in semester 2. So we try to align as best we can to ensure you're learning the information you need at good points. Now, across your placement, we do hope that you will gain experience with a range of presentations, some age range as well, but your setting will be your setting. So you won't be able to move from a school to a clinic to a private practice. The setting will be where it is for your placement, and then hopefully what we aim is that you will still get some diversity in that space. It might be limited to the referrals that come through though. So we never guarantee that you're going to get a huge range and you'll be able to work with all these different presentations, because it does depend, as in reality, what referrals come through to the business, which does make it it allows you to get that understanding of what the profession looks like, what the job looks like out in the real world, which I think helps the students really conceptualize the reality of what we talk about. Now, we also have a simulated placement. Now, this is available for students to complete when maybe because of particular circumstances they need to, they've got a particular interest. It's a well-established program that allows you to gain a lot of experience in different treatment modalities and getting to see treatment modalities through from beginning to end. However, you do need to apply for the simulated placement, and that needs to be approved by CMI. What else would people like to know? Lincoln, Isabel, is there anything else you would have liked to have known at this point about the placements that I've missed?
Absolutely, because I wanted to do a placement in clinic initially, and I thought simulated placement was not for me. I didn't think it, and actually totally switched, because the benefit of simulated is you can each session has to be recorded, so you get to review it back, and just being able to watch your practice and refine it before you go out there in the world is so beneficial. And you get a wide range of clients and presentations in that. They're obviously simulated sessions, but being able to go through CBT, different types of therapy, like acceptance commitment or presentations, so anxiety or panic disorder, all sorts of things you can cover. But I also, just being able to watch yourself back is so beneficial, because you can refine your practice the whole way through. So it's, I've enjoyed it, surprisingly.
Great. And I think that's the truth. A lot of students don't think they'll enjoy it, and then they get in there and they do. I will note one thing in the placement space, please get used to watching yourself back. We do ask you to record your practice quite a lot, and a lot of students are avoidant. They hate the idea. They feel very uncomfortable in that space, but it is a requirement, and it, as Lincoln said, it really does help with improving your own skill and development. So that's maybe just a bit of a warning for you all. If you do decide to come and join us, we're going to ask you to do this, and you can't get away from it. But it does help.
Thank you. There's a few questions flying around in the chat that Mung has asked me to answer. I'm going to get to those, I think. My computer is too tentatively poised onto a box of tissues on my desk here at the in the clinic. So if I start typing, it'll look like there's an earthquake in Hawthorne. Selection process, look, this stuff's all pretty clear in other sources, so I don't want to bore you with that. You can look that up in various sources. There's a minimum WAM of 70, but of course a higher score is better, but it gets factored in with how you present at interview. And we also don't just look at the score, we look at the pattern in your marks in terms of, you know, someone might get an 86 in one unit, but they might get a 62 in another. We're interested in those kinds of things as well. Work experience is, of course, relevant, and the more relevant, of course, the better. But make sure you're honest about that stuff. People get caught out in interviews over talking their experience, and when we ask them about it, it's pretty apparent sometimes that maybe they gilded the lily a bit. Be careful about that. Don't do that. It's a bad look. Recent academic transcripts. Now, it's a contentious one, isn't it? We're already interviewing, and some of you have got like 1 mark, haven't you? Depending on what uni you're at, it's tricky. And you're thinking, well, what are they basing this on? Usually, if we feel like we don't have much of a story, then we'll ask you to provide more information, and you'll be, you know, put on some sort of waiting list for an interview, because we want, when we meet you, to be able to know as much of the story as we can. So for those without, you know, a pretty decent amount of first semester marks already, your thesis stuff, we get it. That's going to take a while, but a lot of other marks are available. So that stuff matters. It's an individual thing. You've got to supply referee information, and then you meet us, 2 of the members of our team, for 20 minutes where we talk to you a little bit about your experience at 4th year, etc., etc. And we also hit you with a bit of a scenario to see how you might react to a client situation. You get to ask us some questions and get a feel for the whole vibe as well. Happy to field questions about that. Lincoln or Iz, any thoughts, or what would you say to someone walking into the interview for an NPP? Good luck out there, or wear a suit of armour? What would you say?
Be prepared for that hypothetical scenario.
That one that you don't know what it is, that one.
Yeah, well, as much as you can be, because they are challenging.
Okay.
It definitely makes you think about things in a 3D way that you're not used to at that point. But yeah, it definitely sparked an interesting topic, at least in my one. So I don't mean to scare you. I just mean that I think it matters. It matters as much as anything else does.
Absolutely, and we're not looking for you to nail the scenario. It's just a little brief kind of thing about, like, well, what might you do here? It's about to see how you think about it. We're not looking for rote answers. If anything, walking into an interview with some kind of AI-driven set of scripts, it's not going to do you any favors, folks. In fact, it will go against you. Be present in there, be yourself. You know, someone said to me in a question online or somewhere I saw the other day, you know, how come you don't ask us for personal statements? Well, I'll let you fill in the reason why we don't ask for personal statements, you know, because why? They're not very personal anymore. And they don't tell us much about you. Being in a room with you is your chance to show us the money. So be yourself and let us get to know you a little bit. That's the goal, hey? I think we might move through, Bung, if that's all right.
I'm happy to speak to this, Terry. Thanks.
Oh, great.
Oftentimes, a key question for students can obviously be tuition fees, and we do acknowledge that at Ken Miller, unfortunately, as a smaller non-public provider, we don't have CSP places, but we do our best to really maintain kind of reasonable and accessible tuition fees, and there are a number of ways that you can actually pay for those studies as well. So many students do choose to allocate their fees to their fee help loan balance for eligible domestic students. But there are also a number of external study loans and scholarships that students might be able to access through other bodies or organizations. And students also can just choose to pay their tuition fees upfront and direct. And where where necessary. We can also work with students to come up with flexible payment plans as well, to acknowledge that we don't want finances to be a barrier or a burden to students in their studies. So we've gotten to the end of our kind of formal slides, and there have been a ton of questions flying through the chat throughout the session. And really now is your chance, as I mentioned at the beginning, to ask those really, in some ways, curveballs, things that you wanted to know direct from the horse's mouth. So I might just refer to a couple of them for now, and I'll pose them to maybe specific panel members, though of course feel free to kind of jump in if you have anything that you would want to share. So one question to get us started. Someone's asked, what are some of the highly valued skills, qualities, or experiences that you would look for during an interview or just in a strong NPP candidate? And I might give that one to Terry for now.
Okay. Some of the things you saw in the slide about like what the goals of the course are. The search for certainty, a rigid thinking style, these are negative indicators for us, because I know that you've had 4 years of training in that. The idea of join the dots, we're going to throw the dots, you've got to pick them up and join them. That's what university study is at undergraduate and to some extent fourth year. The kind of rubricization of thinking about psychology, and 5th year and 6th year programs are about you being able to put that down and to be able to go, okay, I need to be able to respond to a human being who walks in the room. I need to be able to have a radar up to be flexible. I need to be able to be responsible for my own stuff and stop spraying it outwards. The course is to blame for this and this and this. Hang on, what am I doing? How am I coping? What am I missing? How can I take responsibility? A word from the slide. How can I be flexible? A word from the slide. How can I show resilience? How can I be aware of how to look after myself, self-care? These things are so important. So we're looking for any indicators of that. A psychological mindedness is important, and you can get a sense of that when you meet somebody. Court, anything to add?
No, I think you've just kind of outlined some of those threshold competencies that we're looking for. So
yeah,
I think that's the key.
Yeah, and you know, like I said, don't you take a transcript of that rave from me and then ask AI how to look like that. You know what I mean? That will be how not to be successful in an interview. Bring yourself. Let's hear from you, because if that adjustment, I think it's one of the biggest adjustments from fourth year myself, is the idea that you're not on the railroad tracks anymore. You're on a dirt road, and sometimes that can hurt your feet, and sometimes that can make you dirty, and sometimes that can be uncertain. And that's just how it is, because that's how the work is. I can't protect you from that. In a day where you see 6 clients, 4 clients, 5 clients, sometimes you won't know what to do. It just happened to me. So that's the way the work feels. And if that's your idea of hell on a stick, then you need to think about that. Are you ready for the work? Because every client is different. Every client brings new challenges, and we have to be flexible and able to see that and be open to that. And rules are important when you're learning stuff, but after a while they get in the way. Be careful with that stuff. Can I make a point that I forgot to ask, Mung? Sorry, someone asked a question. I think you're going to get to it. And that was like, can I work full-time and do this course? Not full-time, you can't. If you're thinking of working full-time, I don't want you to try and enroll full-time. It's wildly unwise. It's actually physically impossible. And you'll be the person who emails me and says, can I have an extension because I work full-time? And you won't be my friend, and you won't get the answer that you want, because to me, you're phoning it in. You're trying to do something full-time while doing something else full-time. And are you taking the client work seriously? Are you, the research tell us any student who gets overloaded in a 4th, 5th year program is retaining about 20% of the content, right? That's what the facts tell us. If you're working full-time, you're retaining 10% of the content. And how do I feel about churning you out to go and see clients? I don't feel great about that at all. And we take that stuff really seriously. Have you got that message? So we will see that as irresponsible, as self-focused, and as unsuitable in terms of your insight and your ability to actually think about the client and to focus on the right stuff. So hopefully I've been very clear about that, because I'm determined to be very clear about that. We don't apologise for that. We spend a great deal of time talking to students about recommending they go part-time. I'll tell you this, in February this year, we had about a dozen students go very quickly from full-time to part-time because I think they thought what they could do is really not possible. In first semester, you'll be busy for 3 days a week, and that's without placement. In second semester, you'll be busy for 3 days a week. We teach on a Wednesday, and that's a full day. In second semester, we teach on a Wednesday, full day, and you will do one class on a Tuesday or a Thursday. And as Courtney said earlier, you'll do your placements usually on a Thursday or Friday, but not always. And
Not always.
not always. And then you'll also be doing workshops on those times as well. Do you get the feeling it feels like a full-time course? Well, let's ask our experts. Does it feel like a full-time course, folks?
Extremely, yes.
I kind of took issue with you saying 3 days. I'm like, well, I feel like I'm here 7 days, but anyhow.
Yeah, was that you at 8 p.m. when I left the other night? Yes, it's hectic, and it only goes for 9 months, folks. Put yourself in it, immerse into it. You'll stick your head out of the ground at the end of November. There's not a thesis flying around, and you'll think, what the hell just happened? Try to be as present for it as you can. Give yourself a chance. You won't get another chance to study full time to do something where you fully immerse in this work. The rest of the time, you'll be having to pay for professional development. You'll have to be able to seek out supervision. You've got to be able to, all that stuff. This is getting thrown at you at a rate of knots. Try to be there for it. Is all I'll say to you. Sorry, Mum.
No problems. Actually, the next question I was going to pose to Lincoln and Isabel, I'm going to take a slight interpretation on a few questions that have been put through regarding what you would have considered or what you used as your relevant experience. So a few people have been asking, what about experiences in either kind of corporate settings, organizational settings, as well as things that are, non-counseling, working in government, social sector, or policy spaces. So I'm curious for both of you, what was the experience that you felt you were kind of coming in on the grounds of? And what kinds of areas would you advise other prospective students to really think about as being, I suppose, non-traditional areas of related experience?
Would you like to go, or Isabel?
You go for it first.
Okay. To make you all feel better, I had a background in retail sales before this. So if you're thinking something, that's high up there that you need to bring to this course, you don't really. But I did volunteer in crisis support before this, which kind of maybe helped me. But yeah, just retail, and which I guess you could say has people skills, and you could, integrate it here. But yeah, I didn't have anything outstanding on my resume to contribute, I'd say.
Absolutely. Retail is terrifying. Personally, I had a few jobs actually. The main one that I think probably, at least in my interview, they seemed the most interested in was my work in an administration role in a psych clinic, which involved patient intake and assessment and, talking with GPs, those sorts of things. But I actually found that my tutoring of high schoolers to be a very informative one, because in a lot of ways it's like direct client work, and I worked with a lot of neurodivergent children as well. So I had to apply a lot of skills to keep them focused, keep them on task, make sure comprehension was there, especially those that might have had also learning disabilities as well. So those really helped me, but I also did a little bit of volunteering as well. So I think that if you feel concerned about, not having the right work experience, I think volunteering is incredibly important.
Thanks, folks. I have another question for our lovely students. And I must say, I sympathize, or many of us get nervous or struggle with interviews and preparing for interviews. So a question from someone around, how do you, and this is just, your personal strategies or personal approaches, how do you try and make sure that you shine and that you are able to best present yourself, particularly in those kinds of 15-20-minute interview scenarios where, you don't have a ton of time to say everything. How do you make sure that you pick and choose the best and also most relevant parts in a way that lets you achieve your goals?
I feel like in a way, the good thing about the interview is they do ask very pointed questions, which do help direct you to what they are looking for. It's not, big open ones where you don't know how to answer them. It's usually pretty, conversational. It's usually pretty clear what they're kind of looking for. For me, in terms of preparation, I was so nervous. I think I just blanked for the entire morning and just sat waiting. But ultimately, I focused on what mattered to me. And I talked a lot about in the interview about what I would think about if I was with a client, what I would want to do, what I'd feel. And I tried to focus more on, yeah, what mattered to me as a individual, which I know it feels quite broad, but I think that if you think back to whatever experience you have where you worked with another person and you've got that feeling of, yes, I've helped someone, that's what I focused on, that emotion, that feeling. And I tried to imagine that in the room.
I'm not sure how I slipped through the cracks and what the process was here, but I didn't seem to have an interview here, but I did interview at multiple universities throughout the process. And there were surprise questions wherever I went. So there might be ethical considerations or things that are looking at those core competencies that we have to follow. So things that would surprise you, like how would you integrate? They might give you a scenario where there's an ethical concern, and how would you deal with this? And then I guess I hadn't really given that forethought previously, and that's why reviewing those, core competencies that we need to do as psychologists might benefit you, because it'll kind of give you some preparation of something that might show up.
Thanks, folks. Terry, I'm going to pose a question to you, and I don't know how much you would be able to comment on this, but someone's asked, what is the passing rate for your previous MPP students? What's kind of the study progression for most of your cohort look like?
What does passing rate mean? What do we mean by that? What do you mean, like how many people pass units, or how many people?
I think so.
graduate
How many students kind of end up successfully completing the course?
Well, probably about 98% of them. They may not complete it as fast as they want to, and sometimes we'll be working with you during the year to say to you, listen, I think you need to go part-time, or I'd like to see you drop a unit. We're aware of your progress, what's going on. This is a very live process for us. Probably if the question was something like how many people complete at the time that they thought they would go, that they wanted to complete when they started it, I'd say probably about 80%, because some of them self-pull back, as I said to you, in say February, March. They might, before the census date, they go, this is too heavy for me, I need to locate that, or we welcome that kind of approach. Sometimes we will have a chat to you and go, I think you need to pull this back a little bit. This is a concern for us. Students hopefully take that in the right spirit. This is about us, A, guaranteeing that you're okay, B, increasing the chance that you hit your threshold competencies, and C, that you can graduate. So I can't tell you this year yet because we haven't done it, but last year I could do a quick mental calculation and say that the people who finished last year, who were due to finish last year, would have been in the 90%. That's by the, and they were in August and they were thinking, this is what I'm going to do and finish. In February, the ones who thought they were going to finish and then probably went to part-time or decided to pull back or did whatever, I couldn't tell you, but that's a judgment call that I'm glad they've made, because they've made it for the right reasons. Hopefully that's helpful. You can pass these kinds of courses, but just remember, the person who's getting a 56, sure, marks matter less than they do in these programs than they do in, say, a fourth year. But, the person who's gotten an 80 has probably picked up a lot more important content. We'd like to live under the fantasy that what we're giving you is stuff that you will need for the work. And so the person who's getting 25 extra marks might have been able to hold on to some stuff in a clearer way. We'd welcome you to reflect on the idea of, why am I not doing so well? What am I missing? What can I work on? This kind of stuff feels really important. Just as in any client day, you might finish and go, I did well at 11, but I kind of stunk at noon. Why couldn't I connect with that client? Why did I miss that client? This is what the work looks like. It's part of the reflective process. So yeah, the marks are less about this sweating thing that they represent for you in fourth years. They feel really, really different. I'd invite you to think of it really differently, from passing and marks and all that kind of stuff, and to try and pull yourself out of that headspace if you can. This is about getting competencies and skills and feeling ready. That's the stuff I want you to be thinking about.
Thanks, Terry. That's very comprehensive. I know we're coming up to time, but there's still a couple of questions. So this
Yeah,
one
sure.
I'll put to both you and Terry. There are a few folks kind of, I guess, curious or perhaps surprised by the fully online option that we have at Ken Miller. And it is, as both of you mentioned, you know, a point of difference, something that does make the course unique. But a few people are just kind of asking to clarify a little bit more about how we've managed to design that, and also what makes it different from the, I guess, traditional in-person mode of learning that. So, for example, how do you kind of guarantee the quality of either the online learning or the simulated placements in a way that would be equivalent to studying that course in person?
Yep. So let me be clear. Just because you're an online student doesn't mean you're doing a simulated placement. Okay. An online student might be, where are you, Lincoln? What part of the world are you in?
I'm in Brisbane.
You're in
myself.
Brisbane. Yeah. Is
Yeah.
you a local, aren't you? Yeah. You know, we've got students in WA, etc. They're doing placements in WA. They're doing face-to-face placements, like Court said, in clinics, in places, in schools, in New South Wales, in Queensland, in Brisbane, in wherever, right? Because that's our goal, to get you doing that. Some people want to do a simulated. For some, we like to mix the two. For others, like Court said, we'll think this placement is letting the student down. We'll pull them out. We'll help them fill a gap with simulated. So I need you to hear that and to be really clear about it. People hear online course and think that equals all simulated placement. It doesn't. Can I say that one more time? It absolutely doesn't. Okay. It can though. And as Lincoln said, a simulated placement, we use the Deakin suite of simulated placements, and it kicks serious butt. It gives you some access to client presentations, you name it, and it's there. And you get to, as you say, record the work and think about this, and compare that to a placement where you might be working in a school with 12 to 16-year-olds. Sure, it's a great experience working in an organisation, etc. Someone doing simulated is working with an 80-year-old, it's working with someone who's presenting with ADHD, someone else presenting with anxiety, a couple are doing whatever. You know, it's a wild chance to get a range of experience. What do you feel like you missed out on, Lincoln, doing an online version of the course?
Oh, I totally switched. I thought, because I did volunteer crisis support first, so I thought I'm already semi-trained in speaking with people. I've got some experience. I'll be ready. And then you go, it's totally different. Whatever, it is not the same as practice, because there is many processes that you have to go through, and just keeping track of that and having it become autonomous. It's something that you'd struggle. I think most people would struggle with when you go straight into a real clinical practice. Whereas in a simulated environment, I'm really honing those skills. So I'm getting better at note taking, because initially I wasn't able to keep eye contact as I'm referring to my notes, as I'm taking these things. And so these skills are just getting developed. And then I think someone said there that they're worried there's the people that come out of this would have lesser skills. I feel like it's maybe like having your training wheels and going out next year being ready for placement. I think, you know, it'll make me better in the long term.
Yeah. And in relation to the coursework stuff, you know, remember, everybody's getting a recorded lecture, everybody, regardless whether you're face-to-face or online, to watch and listen to in your own time. And then everybody does a tute. And the tute looks largely the same, whether it's online or face-to-face. Sure, we may not physically be able to bust into groups and whatever, but we can break it into breakout groups, etc., etc. Our goal is always to make it as absolutely similar as we can. Some of our workshops are challenges. You know, you want to be able to do something in a workshop sometimes because they feel a little different, a bit more experiential, and we have to change gear a little bit with the online renditions of those. But that's okay. We get through them. You know, I just think, I can't think of too many areas where I think, oh man, they really miss out on that online. I just can't. Lincoln, anything? Court, anything?
I don't think so. I think it took us 12 months to get it better.
Yeah,
I do
sure.
think that last year was a learning for us with introducing the online component, and we didn't quite know how to run some of those workshops. And I think this year we really were able to hone in on that so that there was less difference, that the students were able to get that same learning environment. Just as you are learning new skills all the time in this program, we are learning as well. So we're learning what works in these ways. And I think that difference has definitely lessened this year. Probably there's improvements we can keep making, but that's what we're always doing. Even with the face-to-face, we're always looking to make improvements and do things different and better. So I think that I recognize though that for some students, you know, the idea of a simulated placement, you might feel like you're getting less. And I'm sure there are some practitioners out there who probably would say the same. However, I think part of it is also what you put into it. If you approach the simulated placement like we want you to, which is that you use those videos of best practice as a basis, but it's about you developing your style, you learning how you talk about CBT to a client, how you talk about ACT, how you talk about these different presentations and change the language you use to suit the client and get to practice that. I'm sure Isabel with a face-to-face placement could probably think of, you know, things she did at the beginning that now she's like, oh, I wish I'd done that different. And that's, I suppose, one of the benefits of the simulated placement is you're getting to practice that and you're like, I didn't like that. I'm going to go in and redo the role play and do it again. You can hone that skill.
Just as a point of context to that as well, you know, 70% of our students this year are online, and about 20% of our students are doing solely simulated placement in it. And I think that's a high estimate. It's probably a little less than that because there's some people doing hybrid approaches. So just to give you a sense of that, the first thing we do is ask people what they want to do and why. People who are diving straight into simulated are sometimes avoiding. And we say, oh, you know, front up, see what you think. For others, we think, no, we want to give you some width that I think is really valuable. For others, there's a geographical challenge in terms of you might be in an isolated place. You may not have great access to a placement. The only two you might get are things you don't want to do. In that case, you know, it's another string to the bow. And like Court said in the blurb about placement, if you've got something in mind, you word us up in time and we can get that aligned with the goals, then that's the placement that you'll end up doing. And that's regardless of where you are in Australia. That feels important. The relevant work experience question I wanted to touch on before we finish, and that is, you know, hey guys, it's the 11th of September. I don't think you're going to be able to go and get 9 months of work experience before you do your interview. You know what I mean? So what you've got is what you've got. And for me, I'm interested in people who can hold down a job. I'm interested in people who can turn up on time. I'm interested in people who can engage with the public. I'm interested in people who can, you know, hold down a position that was 4 hours a week while they were studying. Man, I don't know how you can do that. You know, it's that sort of stuff. I don't need you to come in to be a consultant psychiatrist, and you know, it's like it's not required. If you've got some stuff, it's great. But we also know that you're all picking up volunteer work for an hour or two here and there, and that's fine. But you know, I just think focus on your grades, focus on this other stuff. Bring in the room what's real, and don't be over prepared. When people say to me, "How am I going to shine in an interview?" I'm like, probably try not to. Try just to be you, because shiny and whatever is probably not what we're looking for. We're probably looking for people who can, like Isabel said, just be real and talk about what matters to them and who they are. Show us the humanity of the thing. That's what the work is all about. And it's what we're trying to get at. Don't script. Don't give us slogans. Don't give us that stuff. It won't do you any favors in the work, and it won't do you any favors in an interview. Yeah, you just saw a part of me that you'll get to know well.
Thanks, Terry. And I do just want to give one last thanks again to the entire panel for your candor, your transparency, and also the really valuable kind of insight. I know that we've kind of ticked over time, so I just wanted to thank all of you who've attended today and for your interest. Before we wrap up, I'm just going to give one last question around to everyone in the panel, and this is also the test. You have to give like a 10-second answer. So for our 2 students, if you think back to when you were first applying, what is something you wish you'd known? And that could be about the process of applying and how to get your application together. It could be about how to prepare and be ready to start, or it could be something about the studies themselves. And then Terry and Court, similar question to you. What is something that you wish all new MPP students knew going into the course? Again, could be anything about how to prepare, what to look out for, just as a quick final roundup. I should have
You will be
probably asked that.
anxious. Yeah, you will be anxious all year. Be comfortable with that because it's not going to go away.
Lincoln, can I pass to you?
Yeah, be kind to yourself. It is a large workload. You think the thesis is a lot when you're doing that, but then this kind of ramps up, especially as you've got to do your placement coupled with all that learning and assignments and stuff. Be kind to yourselves.
Right, Isabel.
It's going to feel more natural than you'd expect.
Nice. Unlucky last, Terry.
And I would say the skills and the repertoire that got you the mark you needed in honours may not be the skills and the repertoire that will serve you as well in an NPP. You know, let's bring different energies in. We're trying to focus on width rather than some linear thing where you're trying to hit a score. This feels really different. It asks different questions of you. Be open to them and you'll get more out of it.
Brilliant. Thanks, folks. And like I said, one last huge thanks to all of you for sharing and for your time today. We really do hope that we get to see you as part of the Cairn Miller community soon. So make sure to get your application in. And if you do have any questions, you can either contact our applications team via the email listed there, or you can also book a one-on-one admissions consultation with our team, which you can find on our website. And that's a really great option as well, so that you can talk through your individual circumstances, because again, we acknowledge that we have candidates coming through with a very wide range and wide diversity of backgrounds. So don't hesitate to reach out if you do have any questions. But otherwise, as mentioned, we hope to see your application soon, and enjoy the rest of your evenings for now. Thanks, folks.
Thanks,
and
everybody.
bye.
Thank you.